You thought last week's reading was long. Today's was 45 verses if you listened to beautifully read. I always know when I've been to Orlando for an all-day meeting because the notes I use get longer on those days. John's Gospel, for me, has always been a gospel of love, and this story I find just so poignant. I remember reading years ago that the shortest sermon appears in this particular reading. It is one verse and 2 words. Jesus wept. And so we have this God who weeps. Think anybody else has one that does? Here we are at the end of Lent. It's 2 weeks till it's over. It's 2 miles to Jerusalem, to Calvary, to the cross. So much happens in so short a time and space. And here we have the God who weeps, not over his journey or his coming end, but about his friend Lazarus. For those of us who have known this amazing friend we call Jesus, we know what that friendship feels like. In gladness and in sadness, we know what it feels like to have this God who weeps with and for his friends. Jesus actually raises people from the dead in all 4 Gospels, but it is only in the Gospel of John that we hear the story of Lazarus being raised, in the Gospel of love. I think Lenten journeys, whether Jesus or ours, are often desert experiences. We start out and we're pumped and we're called and we have a mission. We begin our ministry. And somewhere along the way, probably more than once, we find ourselves in the desert. Sometimes it's a desert of loneliness, aloneness, solitude. Sometimes it's a desert that is incredibly busy and crazy and full of other people's needs and demands on us and our time and our energy. But they're all desert experiences where somehow we say, God, help me, I don't think I can do this. And I think sometimes we end that sentence with anymore when we really need to end it with without you. That's what Lent does. It brings us deeper. And every time we go deeper into this experience we know as God's love for us, we find desert sands there, blowing at us, stinging at us. And yet somehow we come through those. Ask Sherry. She's just been in a desert of pain. Ask those who have other deserts that they've had in life. Addiction, serious illness, poverty, hunger. And sometimes when we have this desert experience now in this day, and hopefully not in any of those horrendous ways I just mentioned, we wait for what we've lost somehow along the journey. Perhaps we weep for innocence lost. We read or we see stories, we watch television, hear things, and wonder what happened to the innocence there that we see that we don't have anymore. Old and crusty as we've grown in our cynicism. Sometimes we weep for the vitality and health of our younger selves. Sometimes we just creak and creep along with it. But it's not the same 40 years after the youth of vitality. Sometimes we weep for lost self-esteem along the journey, for a life that had so many promises and discovered so many dead ends. Sometimes we weep for others' lack of understanding or respect for us, even when we try our hardest to be all we can be for them. Sometimes we weep for a lost sense of purpose, a dream unrealized. I'm still waiting to realize a dream that we've had for some 12 years, to finally get to Europe, where all the writers I studied and wrote about walked and lived and had their tea in their salons. Someday. Sometimes we weep for lost friendship, and sometimes for lost love. Jesus, perhaps, had many of these same feelings and experiences in the human condition that we've experienced. Robert Hope tells us, in the African American church tradition, there is an expression of hope where the world places a period, God introduces a comma. I think I've heard that somewhere. And what they go on to say is, and suffering does not have the last word. Suffering does not have the last word. As Brian so beautifully read, Jesus tells his disciples, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going to awake him. What he's going to do is put himself in the place, in the position, and in the hands of the people who will deny him and crucify him. But the disciples don't know that, and they say, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right. It doesn't say it was Peter that said that, but there's a piece of my brain that says, was this Peter again screwing up? And Jesus tells them plainly, Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I am glad I was not there, so that you might believe. So many of us have had experiences, like Martha and Mary, of losing a beloved brother, parent, spouse. Let us remember this story so that we might believe Lazarus was raised. So that we might believe whoever we've lost has been raised. Be assured of that. Whoever we've lost has been raised. I was never so fearless of death as I have been since my mom died in our arms 10 years ago. And I got it. She was raised. And while we stayed there with her, we watched her spirit leave her body. And I believe go home to God, who was waiting. When they arrived in Bethany at the house of Lazarus' sisters, Martha and Mary, Martha says to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." And then Mary, kneeling at Jesus' feet, says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Don't you love people that kind of talk in stereo that way? I think I need the rabbi to help me with this one, because I'm really having trouble with the arithmetic here. What we know from this passage is a messenger arrives from Martha and Mary that says, "Your friend Lazarus is very ill." And then we read that he stays there for 2 more days and then goes. Okay, so that's 4 days. But when he arrives, Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days already. So, like, did he die immediately after they sent the messenger? Do you think that's what's happened here?
Maybe, but remember that the day started the night before, so the count is different.
Okay, did y'all hear that? The day started the night before, so the count is different. Do you see why God brought us Steve? He is all I am not. He fills in all the holes I have, and trust me, there are tons of them. And Jesus tells his disciples even before this happens, and here is the belief on which our entire faith rests. I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Get it? Do we get it? If you've lost somebody and you know where they are, we get that. And if you haven't, we get it because Jesus told us, and we believe. Anne Lamott, who is the author of the book we're reading in the book club right now, tells us of Barbara Johnson's kind of famous quote at this point. And Barbara Johnson says, "We are Easter people in a Good Friday world." We are Easter people in a Good Friday world. Yes. Yes, we are. And when all the heaviness and darkness and storm of Good Friday seems to be crashing in on us, we're still Easter people. Have we not known that in the depths of despair, in the depths of our sadness and mourning, we are still Easter people? I remember someone said to me when my brother died so unexpectedly, I just was a rather young man, 62, "Are you sad?" And I said, "Yeah, you know what? My heart is sad, but my soul is glad." And I don't know how else to say that. But both of those are contemporaneously true. My heart was breaking for him and his family and his grandchildren, and I suppose for myself. But my soul was glad that he was released from all the pain and suffering that he had experienced since his stroke 4 years earlier. It was over. And like Lazarus, set him free, unbind him, let him go, bring him out into the light. That's where he is. That's where all of our beloved saints are. Anne Lamott tells the story in the book, and I don't think we've gotten there yet, although some have read it, of her own mother's progressing Alzheimer's disease. And she talks about the time when she and her brothers called in a nurse from the Alzheimer's Association. And they said to her, "We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what's true anymore. Does that ring a bell for any of us? We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what's true anymore. Have we had those moments? And the nurse says to them, how could you know? Such compassion in those 4 words. How could you know? That's what we're all called to. We're called in this Gospel of John to be these people of compassion. We are Easter people in a Good Friday world, and we have with us the God who weeps, who will rise as we will. We are Easter people in a Good Friday world. And when God needs to weep with us, or we need God to weep with us, God does. And when God needs to rejoice with us, and we need to rejoice with God, we do. In the end, what Easter